October 7th was a stark reminder of what happens when humanity fails. When the few do not stand up against the many, when hatred goes unchecked and evil triumphs. We remember not only to mourn the dead, but to protect the living and ensure that such darkness never returns. These are actually the words of the late Lord Rabbi Jonathan Sacks, former Chief Rabbi of the United Kingdom, spoken 10 years ago about the Holocaust. You see, as Jews, we're not at a shortage of commemorations nor words to speak of tragedies that have befallen our people for thousands of years. But that is what it means to be a Jew, at least in part. We don't forget. We mourn, we remember, we commemorate. But while others wither away from the ashes of their tragedies, the Jewish people turn the ashes into solid foundations upon which generations and generations of the strongest, most resilient people in the world continue to grow, build, and thrive. Whether it's Yom HaShoah, which commemorates the 6 million that were killed by Nazi Germany and their facilitators less than 100 years ago, or Yom HaZikaron, which commemorates the over 25,000 soldiers and civilians who have been killed in wars or terror attacks since the reestablishment of the Jewish state in 1948, or the 9th of Av, Tisha B'Av, which commemorates the destruction of both the first and second Jewish temples in Jerusalem that happened on the same day, yet centuries apart. In all instances, we commemorate, recognize, learn, and build. We build upon these tragedies. And of course, the way that Israel has responded to the latest tragedy of October 7th on behalf of the Jewish people was made possible only after 1948, when the reestablishment of sovereignty over the Jewish people's ancestral homeland took place. Before 1948, there was no military, societal, or political response to the tragedies that had befallen our people. And this is exactly the greatest contribution of the modern-day state of Israel. Today we see so many leaders across the free world turning not only against the Jewish state, but against the Jewish people in their states. So quickly turning their backs to us, despite several decades of support and integration. This is true in France, as it is in Chile, as it is in Colombia, and as it is, unfortunately, in so many countries around the world and in so many cities in our country, the United States of America. And while, of course, we need to continue to fight for our place in the United States and wherever we live, we must, of course, dedicate ourselves or rededicate ourselves to the strengthening and rebuilding of the state of Israel, the heart of our people, the land which was given to us by God Almighty, the place to which we pray 3 times a day, the land which we yearn for, and of course, happily today, the place where the majority of Jews in the world live, and that's Israel. But to do so, we must first completely change the way in which we in the diaspora, and humbly the Jews in Israel as well, discuss the realities of why the Jews are in the land of Israel, what we're doing there, the realities of our enemies that surround us and live within us, and stop telling ourselves lies simply because they feel good or because we believe that is what those around us want to hear. But before diving deeper into what that means, it would be disrespectful, or worse, if we didn't first further commemorate those who were lost, or more accurately, were brutally taken from us on October 7th, a year ago today. Of course, also those who survived the tragedies, but will live with the scars of the inhumanity that they experienced on that Black Day. And of course, the soldiers that have taken up arms and given their limbs, their sanity, and at times their lives to protect us, whether we're sitting here in Miami, across the world, whether we're Jewish, whether we're not, as they're fighting not only for Israel, but for Western civilization. And Israel is, of course, the tip of that spear, the land of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The numbers, everyone knows by now. Approximately 6,000 people crossed into Israel from Gaza on that Saturday morning, a year ago today. The vast majority of them were quote-unquote civilians. But this was an attack that was planned for months on end. We watched them train, watched them amass weapons, watched them methodically break down the buffer zone, heard them tunneling underground. Yet those in the quote-unquote intelligence community insisted that they would never attack. despite the fact that Hamas's only reason for existence is the complete and total destruction of the state of Israel. And that morning, over 1,400 were brutally murdered. Over 230 were taken hostage. We lived the horror of that morning no matter where we lived on this planet. As videos rolled in, they burnt families alive. They raped and beheaded our women. They terrorized and slaughtered the elderly. They came upon the now infamous Supernova Music Festival, dressed in many cases as Israeli soldiers, and brutally raped, murdered, maimed, and disemboweled our purest generation. And the terror has continued for so many, with over 101 people still remaining hostage. Estimates are anywhere between 20 and 30 of them still alive, being used as human shields. And these are not just stories, they're not just numbers. This is not yet another tragedy. Yes, as the Jewish people, we've suffered tragedy after tragedy, generation after generation, but maybe because this is our generation. Maybe because this was in the heart of our modern day state of Israel, which was reestablished to prevent this very kind of atrocity from happening. Maybe because we were lulled into a sense of security and complacency. But as has been said over and over again, October 7th, a year ago today, was the worst single day of Jewish history since the Holocaust, with the most amount of people being killed, Jewish people being killed in one day, since the Nazis did the same in Europe. And out of respect for those who were brutally murdered, I'd like to share the story of just a few. First, the Simantov family. The Simantov family lived in kibbutz near Oz. Tamar and Johnny, a young couple in their 30s, and their 2-year-old boy, Omer, and their 5.5-year-old twins, Arbel and Shachar. On that morning, when the sirens began and the terrorists broke into their kibbutz, like so many, they ran into their safe room, their bomb shelter, where they barricaded themselves in, or at least tried to. The remains of the body tell a story that the Hamas terrorists broke into the bomb shelter, shot and killed the parents, leaving the kids alone in the bomb shelter, and then they proceeded to burn down the house with the kids inside. This beautiful family were the first cousins of my good friend, the mayor of Hollywood, Florida, Josh Levy. Just weeks after October 7th, at the end of that month, I was privileged to take several groups of survivors of October 7th and family members of those who didn't survive to Congress in Washington, D.C., to meet with senators and representatives, and even to do some national media to tell their story, and the story of their loved ones. Amongst them were 3 young people who were at the music festival and survived, although they experienced the horrors of that day, running for their lives for hours on end, all separately, but all having the exact same experience, watching people killed in front of their eyes, raped, running through bullets, hiding, and ultimately being saved, including people who are now my friends, Yoni Diller, Maya Pariser, and Natalie Sanandaji. Natalie, an American from New York who was visiting Israel and went to the music festival with friends. They were there along with the family members of those who were kidnapped and killed to tell the stories, to explain what happened. Because if you remember, despite the fact that Hamas filmed themselves on that morning of October 7th and took full credit for everything they did, the world stopped believing them. The world turned their backs against Jews and Israel, but not just that. The world turned their back on facts themselves. Facts became irrelevant. Videos posted by Hamas, filmed by Hamas, celebrated by Hamas, were just sort of ignored as potential, maybe AI, anything to disregard the truth. Why? Because those facts did not fit into the narrative that the Western world wanted to put. And on October 7th, after the war started, the brave soldiers of the IDF left their families, their comfortable homes, their jobs as doctors, lawyers, high-tech executives, plumbers, electricians, drivers, and everything in between, to put on that olive green uniform with the acronym Tzahal on it. Tzva Haganah LeIsrael, the Army of the Defense of Israel. And a few weeks later, they charged into the belly of the beast to destroy those who had risen to destroy Israel and to find and rescue our hostages, both of which are explicit commandments in the Jewish Bible and the Old Testament. We are commanded first that when someone rises to kill us, we shall rise and kill them first. And second, a commandment which, according to Maimonides, the Rambam, one of the greatest Jewish thinkers of all time, is meant to be the most important mitzvah, commandment in the Old Testament, in the Bible, in the Torah, which is to redeem the captives, to release hostages. And as you may know, when ground forces enter a landmass, the typical formation is that of a triangle. And on October 27th, the first soldier within the first unit at the tip of that triangle, the tip of the spear for the IDF and for all of Western civilization, was my good friend Moshe Leiter. May his memory be blessed. Moshe was a captain in Shaldag, the Air Force's commando unit, where he served until the age of 33. He then went on to medical school at Ariel University. While in medical school, he was serving as a reservist, as a major. He left his wife and 6 children from ages 15 to only a few weeks old to fight for his people, for our people. And on November 10th, he and 3 of his soldiers, all family men, were in battle in northern Gaza when they walked into a booby-trapped home from which they had been taking fire. They were killed instantly. There are countless other stories like this. This is the devastation that was October 7th and that will continue to be. The remnants of this loss, of those losses, will continue to be with us, but particularly with the families of those who were lost. Each one his own tragedy. Each child, each widow, each mother, each father, each sibling, each friend will live with this pain the remainder of their days. I've been blessed. I've been to Israel 3 times since October 7th, and hopefully I'm going later this week, and witnessed firsthand how the Israeli people have turned the devastation into strength and resilience. The people of Israel are more determined as ever to destroy their enemies and to continue the work of settling the land, becoming and continuing to be a light unto the nations. It's impossible to go to Israel today and not leave inspired. Inspiration which is impossible to describe, but impossible not to internalize and feel at our very core. In the diaspora, we have much to learn from those Jews who live in the center of the Jewish world, at the heart of what makes us who we are. And it's our job in the diaspora to be sure we are connected to them and supporting their efforts every day. Other than the practical, which is to support Israel, to continue our fight against anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism, we also must become truth tellers. We cannot shy away from the truth, no matter how difficult it is. Now, there's too many to list, but I selected a few that I'd like to highlight for you today. 1. We will only achieve peace through overwhelming strength. There's no piece of paper that we can sign that would bring us peace today. We'll only have peace when our enemies understand that they have absolutely no chance against us and respect our strength and might, be it economic, political, military, or all of the above. 2, there is no piece of land that we can give to anyone, whether it's the Palestinians, the United Nations, Saudi Arabia, or the international community, that would bring us peace. In fact, former Knesset member of the Israeli parliament for the left-wing Labour Party, Einat Wilf, recently commented that the 2-state solution, which she had always supported, was just a hypothesis, and that hypothesis was tested and failed. She says the Palestinians have been clear. We haven't been listening. They don't in fact want a 2-state solution. They want a 1-state solution without Israel. Welcome, Einat, to the reality that we're all living. Next, Hezbollah is a terror organization, which Iran created in the early 80s when the Lebanese government decided to kick out the PLO, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, from Lebanon. Its sole purpose is to create an Islamic caliphate, starting with Israel. The only territorial dispute that Israel has with Hezbollah is that Hezbollah believes that no Jews should live in the territory called Israel. Next, the United Nations has been taken over by Muslim countries and their apologists, and they hold no moral value at all. They cannot be trusted or relied upon in any way shape, or form the United Nations is dead. Next, it is in the United States' best national security interest to support the State of Israel, as current events have proven that Israel is in fact on the front line against global terrorism, which aims to destroy Western civilization, starting with Israel because of its proximity and its symbolism of what it means to the West. And remember, in their own words, they promised to come after the United States next. Israel is an insurance policy for the United States that guarantees that next day never comes. Here at home in the United States, we must learn from the lessons being taught every day by the people of Israel. We must be strong, resilient, and never yielding. We must be hardened and strengthened by these tragedies, not broken. We must realize from the crumbling of so many of our institutions in our country that prove to us beyond a reasonable doubt that institutions of DEI, intersectionality, CRT, liberal education, and politics as a whole are not places for the Jewish people. We fall on the wrong side of the ledger. Of course, this does not mean that we are home free on the other side of the political spectrum either, where we are most welcome today, in my opinion. But still, we must continue to work every day to fight for a place here in the United States of America, the country that has been most welcoming to the Jewish people in the history of the world, and where about 6 million of us live today as proud Americans. Next, we must not pretend that those who call for our destruction actually want to live side by side in peace with us. We must call out those who stand against us, whether they're in the United Nations, in the White House, in Congress, in your local school board, or even your colleagues. And for the Jewish community, we must strengthen our connection to Israel, visiting, investing, sending our kids to study there. We must strengthen our connection to Torah and mitzvahs. It's not enough to be a, quote, cultural Jew. We must not allow our enemies to separate our love for Israel and the centrality of Israel and Zionism to our identity. We must remember why we're in the land of Israel. Just a few weeks ago, in the Torah portion, we read that Moses, or Moshe Rabbeinu, turned to the people of Israel before they entered the land and instructed them to settle the land, reminding them that this is their inheritance from God. Because we are the indigenous people of the land of Israel. The Jewish people are the indigenous people of the land of Israel. And I hope that next year, when we get together to commemorate October 7th, we also will be able to take a moment to celebrate and recognize the destruction of our enemies, Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Islamic Republic of Iran, and that all the remaining hostages had been freed. And I'd like to end with a positive note. I truly believe, both objectively and from the depths of my heart, that at the end of this war, whenever it'll be, we will usher in a long period of time of prosperity and peace, which will reign over the land of Israel and trickle down all over the world, including the strengthening of Jewish communities everywhere. Thank you.